So there's this massive revolution happening in finance right now, but you're probably not going to see it leading the nightly news. The absolute biggest names on Wall Street, I'm talking the giants who manage trillions of dollars, are making their move onto the blockchain. And, they're doing it so quietly, you might have just missed it. So let's pull back the curtain on this story, a multi-trillion-dollar shift, where the old guard of finance is starting its quiet takeover of crypto. This quote, man, it just perfectly captures the scale and honestly, the sheer audacity of what just happened. A true financial titan made a monumental move onto a public crypto network, not with some big, flashy announcement, but with a single, unannounced transaction. All right, so who is this giant? It's a company called Amundi. Now, you might not recognize the name, and that's probably because they mostly handle things like European pension funds. But trust me, on the world stage, these guys are an absolute behemoth. And when I say behemoth, I really mean it. Amundi has about 2.3 trillion euros under management. To put that into perspective for you, that is bigger than the entire asset management division of Fidelity. They are the #1 asset manager in all of Europe and easily in the top 10 globally. So yeah, this isn't some fintech startup just messing around. This is the establishment making a huge, decisive move. So what do they actually do? Well, Amundi launched what's called a tokenized version of one of their money market funds, and they put it directly onto the public Ethereum blockchain. Now, this isn't some risky speculative asset. This is like the boring foundational bedrock of the traditional financial system, a super safe, very stable, and highly regulated fund. And now it has a digital twin living on Ethereum. And the way they did it is almost as important as what they did. The very first transaction, it was recorded on Ethereum all the way back on November 4th. But Amundi? They didn't say a word, not a peep. They waited almost 3 full weeks before making any kind of official announcement. It's that classic move, right? Act first, announce later. They literally proved the whole thing worked before they even told the world about it. Okay, so this whole digital twin idea is really at the heart of everything. And to understand why this is such a massive game changer, we have to break down the core tech they used, tokenization. At its core, it's actually a pretty simple concept. You're basically taking a real-world asset, could be a share in a fund, could be a piece of real estate, even a work of art, and you're converting the ownership rights into a digital token. The best way to think about it is like a digital wrapper. The actual asset underneath doesn't change one bit, but now it's wrapped up in this token that can be managed, moved around, and recorded with just incredible speed and efficiency. So what does this actually look like for you, the investor? Well, it's surprisingly simple. First, you subscribe to the fund, the same way you always would. Then, the system creates a unique digital token that represents your share, and boom, that token is recorded on the Ethereum blockchain. Finally, you, the investor, hold that token right in your own digital wallet. You now have direct, verifiable, digital ownership of your piece of that fund. But here's the thing. Amundi's move was really just the opening act. They are not alone in this, not by a long shot. They are just the latest heavyweight to join what you can only describe as an institutional stampede onto the blockchain. I mean, just look at this chart. At the end of 2023, the total value of all these tokenized funds was sitting around $770 million. Okay, not bad. Now, fast forward to today, just a little over a year and a half later, and that number has just exploded to $9 billion. That is some serious hockey stick growth, and it's a huge sign that this whole trend is hitting a major inflection point. And this tells you who's leading the charge. You've got BlackRock, the world's biggest asset manager, with $2.3 billion already on-chain. Franklin Templeton is right there, with over $800 million. Add in Amundi and a few others, and you get that $9 billion pie. The point here is crucial. The titans of finance, they are officially in the game. Maybe the most surprising part of this whole story is where they're all choosing to do this. For years, the big assumption was that Wall Street would just build their own private, walled garden blockchains to keep total control. But that is absolutely not what's happening. Now, they're deliberately choosing to build on public, permissionless blockchains. So why? Well, it's all about strategy. A single public chain gives them one unified platform for everything. They're betting on the network effect. The more people and assets that join a single network, the more valuable that network becomes for everyone. Plus, they're picking a network with over a decade of proven security and a huge pre-existing ecosystem of developers and tools ready to go. And because of that, a really powerful consensus is forming. BlackRock chose Ethereum, Franklin Templeton chose Ethereum, and now Amundi chose Ethereum. I mean, the message could not be any clearer. When it comes to institutional grade assets, Ethereum is rapidly becoming the go-to global settlement layer. So, this incredible mashup of old school finance and new tech, it opens up a whole universe of possibilities. But, and this is a really big but, this new frontier is definitely not without its risks. And you can bet that the world's financial watchdogs are paying very, very close attention. Let's look at both sides of this coin. The promise is huge. We're talking streamlined order processing that makes everything faster and cheaper, wider access for new investors around the globe, and maybe the holy grail, the potential for true 24/7 trading. But on the flip side, you've got the peril. And these aren't just made-up fears. The Bank for International Settlements is flagging some very real risks: new operational vulnerabilities, unexpected liquidity problems, and even new systemic exposure that could affect the entire financial system if this isn't rolled out with extreme care. So when you step back and look at all this incredible progress and all this potential risk, what's the ultimate takeaway from this quiet revolution? I think this image really captures the essence of what's happening. We're witnessing a fundamental convergence of two worlds that, not too long ago, felt like they were in different galaxies. On one side, you have traditional finance, the multi-trillion-dollar asset managers, government debt, the whole established system. And on the other, you've got decentralized finance, public blockchains, digital tokens, and this promise of global open access. Well, those two worlds, they are no longer separate. They are merging, right here, right now, right before our eyes. And that, well, that leads us to the final and really the most critical question of all. This isn't just about putting old assets onto new tech anymore. This is about potentially building entirely new rails for the global financial system. So are we witnessing the very, very beginning of a single unified system, one where that line between traditional finance and decentralized finance just fades away? Well, that is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is going to define the next century of finance.